What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Security Squawk podcast. I'm your co-host, Brian Horning. With me, I have Reginald Andre down in Miami, Florida, Art Solvers, Ryan O'Hara with Sphinx Cybersecurity out of somewhere in Michigan, right? I forget where.
Detroit area. Yep.
Detroit area, right? And then Randy Bryan down in Texas, USA.
Yeah, deep in the heart of Texas.
With Tech Rescue. Welcome, gentlemen. Welcome to another show, another week where we educate the world about cybersecurity and what the hell's going on out there. Ryan, we were looking for cyber attacks last week. We were struggling to find some. We needed content for the show. You said, I think it's the calm before the storm, and here we are. We have a storm. So we got a bunch of cyber attacks we're going to run through today on the show. But before we do that, and before we let you know what's going on and how you can not do the things that these companies did because they got attacked, and we're trying to help everybody not get attacked, share our show. That's the only fee. We don't bore you with commercials. We don't stop the show to talk about things that you don't want to hear. We just bring you the goods. We bring you the content. So if you can help us by sharing the show, just hit the little share button. We're live on basically every social media platform there is right now, and every one of those has a share button. So all you got to do is hit share and let people know that we exist.
And you're not just helping us, you're helping the people that you share it with. I mean, the biggest problem in cybersecurity right now is the lack of knowledge that people have as to how serious it is. So
yeah, my point is that we don't get paid for this. So the only reason you would share this is to get the information out. We're not doing this for any kind of money. We just all are passionate about what we do, and we know that this is something that is very preventable. And we try to bring that to the show every week and start helping people understand that you have to do something around cybersecurity. You have to do something with this stuff. You can't just hope and pray that you're never going to have an issue or never going to get hit by a cyber criminal. As you can see, these companies that we're going to talk about today, a lot of them. So we got a lot to get through. First two, I would say, related in a way, and I'll pop it up on the screen. It's two universities. One, I guess we'll do Austin, PA, since that kind of was the one that hit first, I guess, so to speak. But we have two colleges right now that are basically dealing with a cyber attack. Austin, PA State University is actually getting back on their feet after a little over a week of dealing with a ransomware attack at the school. They had to shut down the school. One of you guys just chime in here. I know we found a couple interesting things, and I know Andre in the green room, you mentioned something about how they announced this. So maybe we could talk about that a little bit and talk about how maybe why people are upset on how this was announced and communicate it, and talk about if we feel like that's an okay way to do it. So what happened over there?
Yeah, so we have the alert system was via Twitter. So they essentially, in order to broadcast to all the students, faculty, vendors, anybody that was connected to their systems, they let out a tweet that says ransomware attack. This is not a test. Shut down all computers now.
Yeah, so I guess you guys can all chime in here. What do we think about that?
It's just a horrible way to do it. And plus, on top of that, they didn't spell it right. So, we've had there was a nuclear attack warning, I think, out in Hawaii like a year ago. And, and you've got all kinds of trolls all over everywhere on the internet. And so when they put out a tweet that says ransom and then where, and then a bunch of caps and a bunch of exclamation marks, I probably would have I don't know. I don't think I would have believed it when I first saw it. And a lot of people were getting, mixed messages from it. It's very inappropriate. They probably didn't have a plan though, and they were just doing the best they could is probably the bottom line.
It amazes me sometimes, that companies or universities will do stuff like this, and they actually run the playbook that we try and teach people to be wary of, right? So we just talked last week about a hack that started where they got into their Instagram account and then started broadcasting fake messages as that entity. So to send stuff out on Twitter here, yeah, that would have been my first reaction as well. Is okay, well, this looks more like the scam than what they're talking about. The other thing that jumps out to me is I'm wondering if they had any type of incident response plan in the first place, because I can't see this being in their playbook. Right. Immediately jump on Twitter and let everybody know to unplug their computers, right?
And plus, it's Twitter. I mean, Twitter is not as big as Facebook. They probably should have a way to text everybody or call everybody or email everybody. Not everybody's on Twitter. I mean, there's a lot of people on Twitter, but there's still tons that aren't.
Well, they can't email you about the email being down.
Right.
Yeah, true. They can't get into the thing to send you the text because that's probably locked up.
Yeah, it could have just been the last resort where they didn't trust anything, and they know. I mean, this is a university, so I'm sure most of these students are on this type of social media platform, and for them, this was just the fastest way to get the message downstream.
Well, hopefully they learn from this and come up with a better plan for disseminating that information down the road. They need to do a debrief on this.
It does raise the question of, when I look at that kind of message, I go, wow, was their network segmentation that non-exist? Like you can't have the school administration, the school operations on the same network as the students. And I see that tweet is almost like, hey, if you're on our network, you could potentially get ransomware spread to your computer. Definitely we know that certain operations and systems that they use to deliver their service, which is education, were impacted by this. And then you're also putting out tweets to the public saying, don't plug into the network. That just screams to me that this network isn't very well segregated.
And both of the articles are very similar in that respect too. What jumped out to me was that they didn't really seem to know what was going on. Both of them had to shut down campus to do their investigation. It seemed like they had no idea what to do and just shut everything down while they tried to figure it out, as opposed to reading like they had a plan going into it and were running a playbook of some kind.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's what we see. We see in a lot of these. The lessons learned out of this are going to be a lot of missteps along the way where people think that they were doing the right thing and they were helping the situation. Mm-hmm. But in hindsight, some of the things that they're probably doing made the situation worse or made it harder for forensics people to figure out maybe what happened or what's going on, which, you're going to clean up after you kind of do a postmortem. But you can also do this as a tabletop exercise, as something that you're not going to, as a practice, a fire drill. You don't want to be doing this stuff for the first time during a live attack, during an event, because these are the kind of things you kind of see. As Ryan mentioned, coming up in a more controlled manner and handling the situation in a more controlled manner is really where you want to be. And that's on the right side of the event. That's after the boom, after the event has occurred. The cyber attack is done. We're not even talking about all the things they probably should have done, like network segmentation, to prevent the spread of this attack to being so widespread. So these are all things that universities, K through 12, all these entities that have computer labs and lots of computers in one area connected to the network. These are all things that you need to consider when you have these types of environments, like network segmentation, making sure that, lab computers are not able to, if they get infected, are not able to affect the operations of the school and things like that. And I think, to Ryan's point, that's what was lacking here. The ability or the lack of this being in place shines through in what's being said and how it's being handled by the school officials. So in my opinion, that they probably could have done a lot better on the front side of this. And I don't know when people are going to get it, guys, that this is you're going to get attacked. You can not get it. You can still get attacked and it not be successful, right? If you have the things in place. But if you don't have the things in place, the attacks are going to be successful. The other thing that people have to realize is that there are thousands of attacks that happen every day that go unsuccessful because there are companies that are out there doing it the right way. But we're still, the ones that are doing it in the right way are still in the minority, in my opinion. So
I think the moral of the story here is that people need to understand that they don't know what they don't know. I mean, people seem to think that you know a little bit about computers and then you have things under control here, or you can deal with it when it comes, and that's just not the case, especially these days. So I'm just thinking like universities like this. I mean, they've obviously got a pretty robust IT infrastructure. I mean, computers are a critical part of the education system, especially at that level. But are we trusting these security decisions to IT infrastructure people? One does not always equal the other. And I think there's this misconception that, if somebody knows something about IT, that they also know about cybersecurity. And that's often not the case.
Right. So we got, and I don't know if Ryan wants to pick this one up since it's in his backyard, but
yeah.
We got this up in Battle Creek, Michigan. We got another community college this time who's dealing with technology issues, and they kind of figured out that those technology issues were a cyber attack and ransomware. So what's happening up in your neck of the woods at Kellogg Community College?
This looks like a very similar situation to me where, even the way that the story starts, that the technology issues that they have been experiencing were caused by a ransomware attack. So, they didn't even know right away. So we were kind of, joking around in the green room like, oh, somebody was complaining about the internet being slow. And then, oops, a couple of days later, we realized, hey, this is an actual, cyber attack that we need to deal with. So as of right now, they've been down for about a half a week. The timing of this is also interesting because the last day of their classes is May 9th. So they are right at the end of a semester where everybody's trying to get stuff in so that they can graduate on May 12th. Whether or not that was part of the attack and coordinated that way or just a coincidence, who knows? But the similarities between this one and the last one are this, just looks like they were completely unprepared and caught with their pants down with something like this.
Good analogy. You guys want to add anything over there in Texas and Florida?
Yeah, a little bit. So the previous story looked like they were back in business very quickly.
I think it's been a week, right?
So maybe they overreacted and it was smaller than it, they thought it was at first. But this one here, they just seem to be more clueless, man. We do know that from another article that we talked about in the green room, we do know that they are trying to restore from backups and, and all this stuff. This article talks about them sending out a password reset to everybody that's, all the students.
Yep.
And I don't know if that's smart at this point, because if the attackers are still in, now you might be giving them insight into everything where maybe they didn't have insight to everybody's passwords before. I don't know, man. Just seems like these guys are just pushing buttons and, hoping to fix it. I don't mean to be negative, but it doesn't seem like they really are aware of what's going on yet.
And I mean, it does say that they did engage with an incident response team to take the lead on looking at this. I wonder if budget's not, another issue here. I mean, this is a community college versus, the state university that we just looked at. And, how much of this is, they didn't have, the quote unquote budget to look at this stuff or weren't budgeting properly, when you really look at it. But yeah, this one just looked to me like, they got caught with their pants down.
Yeah. So moving right along, I was gonna do the technology company next, but I think I'm gonna roll into the healthcare ones. This Yuma Regional Medical Center got attacked last week. They've been dealing with it for a little while now. Let's just talk about this one briefly, and then we'll jump into what I think is the bigger one. Just because of who it is. But we have another, it seems like these are the favorite targets, right? Schools, hospitals, and municipal governments. And I can only guess that the reason that this is because we're just not doing a good enough job with cybersecurity, right? Hospitals have been a major target for cyber criminals for a long time now, for almost as long as ransomware has been around, and it just doesn't seem to end. It seems like month after month we're dealing with a regional medical center or some kind of major hospital, hospital companies like that run hospitals, conglomerates, if you will, that run hospitals. If you guys remember, UHS, Universal Healthcare Services, got hit a couple years ago, and they manage hundreds of hospitals around the country. And we're starting to see a lot of those entities get hit here. And here we go again with Yuma. Who wants to pick this one up? It's close to you, Randy. Why don't you chime in? Fire. It's closer to you than any of us.
Third of the United States.
We do it when we freestyle. It's all geographic.
You got the Southwest, buddy.
Yeah. So this is a really interesting attack because they say that it was they detected it. They detected the bad guys in the network, and then proactively they shut down all 400-ish systems to protect customer data, which is actually kind of encouraging, because if they're really at that point, were they watching the network? Were they watching for anomalies in the network? Did they detect something like that and then shut it down? Or, we don't really know from this story. Or did one of the IT guys get ransomware on one of the computers? We don't really know exactly what happened, but it does seem like they were aware of it, which is a good sign. And then they shut down all the systems. Basically what they're doing is they're bringing them back one by one. They're saying that they're scrubbing them. I don't know if that's good, if they're just shooting in the dark. Have they already checked their firewall, their network system? But bottom line is the entire medical center is down. Basically, they're having to use paper for things.
They're slowly coming back up right now, but yeah, they again, it's to kind of paint the picture for people. You switch over to pen and paper, right? Which it's like me walking around today with my hurt leg, right? I can move like a tenth of my normal speed. And that's what this feels like. Like you can't get things done as quickly as you're used to. And then on the flip side, which a lot of people don't realize until they're kind of like a week into doing things on pen and paper, that, oh crap, somebody's going to have to put this all into the computer system once the computer system comes back up. And that's costs money too. So these are all the things that we're trying to make people aware when you look at, a cybersecurity service or a solution and you're like, well, that seems really expensive. Well, you know what? There's a lot of things that happen in a cyber attack that are really expensive too, that you don't always think of. And, these are one of those things, like who's going to enter in all the data that was put on pen and paper for the last week, 2 weeks, however long. The bigger your organization, the longer the attack, the bigger that dollar amount is going to be for data entry to get that stuff back into the system. So
on top of the fact that mistakes happen, right? So like you've got people who are trained on certain processes and all of a sudden they can't do those processes because systems are down. Yes, they can switch over to pen and paper, but they're not used to that. And mistakes are going to happen. This is a medical center. Think about, certain mistakes. What if somebody didn't take down a note, where somebody has an allergy to a medication and then they were given something that could kill them? I mean, that's
the amount of liability that opens the door is open to a tremendous amount of liability for any company who has to deal with a cyber attack. And just as Ryan pointed out there, you open yourself up for malpractice lawsuits with cyber attacks, whether you think that that's a viable thing or not. I'm aware of a police department that got cyber attacked recently. And I was talking about that with somebody who's a lawyer, and the lawyer's like, man, if I'm a defense attorney, I'm sending letters to everybody who has a pending case at that, municipal building or wherever. And I am basically petitioning the judge to say that my case information was compromised and I want my case thrown out. And by law, they have to do that. Like if cyber criminals got your pending case record, and technically your case can now be thrown out. And what a nightmare that is for, prosecutor's office or, police department who are trying to put criminals behind bars. I mean, these are all real things that these entities have to deal with after a cyber attack. And these are all things that the four of us here have seen after cyber attacks that people don't really ever think, like, the, I guess, the surface level stuff that you would expect, in a cyber attack. Your stuff's encrypted. You can't access your files. Yeah, that's annoying. It's going to cost money. But all these other things that trickle down after the fact, lawyers get involved, and then it gets really ugly for the organization who was attacked on a lot of different levels.
One way or another, you're either going to invest in cybersecurity on your own accord, or you're going to invest in it later if you didn't play. So
but like the important thing is, it's not just about paying these cyber criminals. Like everybody comes out of the woodworks, and nobody feels bad for you that you got cyber attacked. These are one of those crimes where people call you dumb and stupid when you become a victim of this type of crime, that you didn't do enough. I just saw Marcus Lemonis last week, or 2 weeks ago, and his company, Good Sam, and publicly traded company, got cyber attacked in February. And this is a guy who comes to an event that I go to. He's been in front of me multiple times, and people who run companies like mine, he knows that we're out there. We're able to help with cybersecurity. And he admitted that he just got by on this, right? He felt like they were doing enough, but he always thought that they could do a little more, but he just kind of, felt like he was rode the edge with it and spent just enough to, make sure he was secure. But, there were other things he probably could have done that would have prevented this attack. And now he wishes he did those things. And he said, like, I'll do anything now. Like, security has become number one for us because they've gone through a cyber attack. And he admitted right then and there that he thought he would never be somebody who would ever have to deal with a cyber attack. And he is. And, and he said it. He said everybody that came to him called him like, what are you, an idiot? Like, all these things. He's, he could have prevented it. He knows he could have prevented it. People told him he could have prevented it if he did the right things. And lesson learned on his part. It's going to cost him a lot of money to get through this. So, but that's, these are real things happening to real businesses all over the world, all over this country. And we're just trying to help people understand that this threat is real. So American Dental Association, gentlemen, they got hit too, right? So we got UMA, and then we got the American Dental Association. Why we want to talk about the ADA? Number one, they do possess a lot of data about dentist offices, their practices, certain things that happen, in their offices. They have a lot of information and data that cyber criminals would want to sell. And, they got hit. But really why we want to talk about these guys is we want to talk about kind of this new ransomware group that has been associated with this attack. Based on our research, it seems like this group is associated or an offshoot of Conti, which is a very large and successful ransomware group that's out there. I don't know who wants to run point on this one. I'll kind of just stop talking and somebody else can start talking. But at the end of the day, what is the name of this new group? What are they notorious for? What are we seeing with them? Because they hit a pretty big organization here in the American Dental Association, well-funded organization. And obviously you see in the headline here that Tenet Healthcare also got hit, which we didn't even talk about that. I don't think we even talked about that last week. That's been going on for a while. Tenet Healthcare is a large hospital conglomerate. They manage a lot of hospitals and medical facilities down in Dallas, out of Dallas, Texas. That's down your way, Randy. So I didn't want to gloss over that as well. So you basically, in the last 15 minutes here, we're talking about three pretty big medical facilities that got attacked in the last week. So, what do we know about Black Basta? And
What did you say?
Black Basta.
Black Basta. All right.
What do we know about Black Basta, Andre?
Yeah, so they started the Black Basta, and we're gonna keep on saying that because we love just saying that, right?
This story would have made the cut if that was the only part of the story, I think.
Yeah.
Yes. So they started conducting attacks middle of April 2022. So they're brand new, and but it's a very similar playbook where they're encrypting the data. They're using the .basta extension to encrypt the files, and then from there they're leaking the data, saying, here's proof that we have your information, and if you don't pay us X dollar amount, we're going to release this out to the dark web. And you're going to get more black eyes, and we just talked about lawsuits and things like that.
Yep.
And they have leaked a sample of data from the ADA attack, so
Yeah,
we know
that's right.
that they're in, and this is serious.
Yeah. So the data that they're saying so they say they have about 9-10 gigs of data from the ADA, which isn't a ton, but it could be a ton. You just never know, right?
Mm-hmm.
It could be compressed files and PDF files, because they've already leaked W-2 files and other financial information from the ADA. So we know they have good, decent information. So, I got up on the screen the ransomware note. Your network is encrypted by the Black Basta group. Instructions in the file readme.txt. So I guess if anybody's wondering, what's in the instructions is basically more information saying like, haha, we got into your network and we encrypted all your files. Now you owe us money. Here are the different ways you can contact us, usually some kind of encrypted Proton mail address, and so other ways that you can contact them, maybe through Signal or Telegram, and they might have an Onion browser chat room that you might be able to jump into if you feel like going through all that to get on the dark web. Ultimately, they have their Bitcoin address and where they want you to send the money, how much time you have to send it, and any other important information they want to throw in there. That's really what's in the readme.txt file. They do, I think you mentioned it, they do put the file extension BASTA at the end of the files after they encrypt them. So, they've only been around since about mid-April, according to security researchers. So they're only a few weeks in. And I guess my question is it really that easy? Or is this just kind of like Conti morphing into a new name because they don't like to stick around, with the same name for very long? I think that's a new tactic that I think we're starting to see because the FBI is getting so good at tracking these guys down, spinning up new servers, new groups, sending traffic and Bitcoin addresses to different places, just kind of like a shell game, kind of keeping things moving around. I think they're starting to learn, or at least they're starting to think that that's providing them a little bit of a safety net to continue to do this stuff. That's kind of my opinion on what's going on here, but what do you guys think is happening here? Because, to go from non-existent to basically one of the top ransomware groups in about 2 weeks is pretty damn impressive.
It could be more. Go ahead. Sorry.
Maybe they just wanted a cooler name. It could be as simple as that. Probably not, but
it could be a morph. It could be a spinoff. We don't really know yet. It could be ransomware as a service because it looks like Conti, but reading into the details, this particular malware takes advantage of Windows Fax, the Windows Fax service. It's basically where it builds its little home to hang out while it's doing its business, living off the land. I don't know that I've seen that. Brian, you might know. One of you guys might know, but I don't know that I've seen that with Conti before. But bottom line, we don't really know yet. But these guys are doing a lot of the same things, and they already have a website. They've got like at least 10 major companies that they've already ransomwared. And they're starting to either pull in bucks or delete, release that data that they're getting from people. So
Well, and this could be, we had talked, last month that Conti was having some of those issues when they came out really hard in support of Russia, that some people within the organization didn't have the same feelings and exposed some things there. I mean, maybe this is a splinter group made up of the people who left the group.
Could be.
Could be. I mean, but I mean, we kind of nailed it on the head when we identified the last few weeks as being like the calm before the storm. Mm-hmm. And now this group shows up, and it's been wild the last week. I mean, the amount of attacks that we're just able to pull up today, again, these are the ones we know about. This is like 5%, 95%. We don't even hear about, we don't know about, and you're barely hearing about this stuff. I mean, you got to dig for this stuff. Mm-hmm. Right, you got to know, and I guess we'll just move on, because like, how many people have heard about this Bloom technology, right? That we're going to talk about.
Actually,
now.
Brian, real quick before you move on, can you go back to that last story?
I can.
Buried in the bottom of that is a much smaller piece of that, talking about tenant healthcare.
Yeah, I mentioned them. Yeah.
What I wanted to point out with that one is this one seems like a better example of a company that had things prepared and was handling things a little bit better. I mean, it's a news article based on their responses, so take it for what it's worth. But they operate 620 facilities in 34 states. And based on the information that's here, it looks like they were able to react quickly. So just logistically, with that many locations across that many states, even the best of playbooks, it's going to be a difficult task. But it looks like they had a bunch of stuff in place where they were able to react. They knew what to do, and they took those actions quickly. So I just wanted to highlight that. It's not always about the bad companies. This one, on paper, looks like they did a very good job of handling it.
Yeah, they had to disclose it because of who they are and how big they are. But you're right. They did. It was probably well over 7 days into the attack before they disclosed it to the public, which I think is a smart move. Mm-hmm. Right? If you can, the more time you can buy before you have to disclose it, so you can actually, when you do have to disclose it, you have the best information, is the way to go.
And all that stuff is driven by those playbooks and having those relationships with their attorneys who are helping them run those playbooks. So.
Yeah, and I just think that the more time you have to plan and get your information in order so you can share that with whoever needs to know it is a smarter play. Unfortunately, not everybody has that luxury. Like, some entities are just, they're just so in the public that, when their website goes down, I think it's some companies who have like cloud SaaS applications. Like, when their SaaS application's down, you got no choice. People are on Twitter going, "Is this down?" And everybody's going, "Yeah, it's down." And then an hour or two later, somebody figures out it's a cyber attack. That's what happened with Kronos. That's what happened with Schedulefly. So, and this is another one. This was interesting to me, guys, because it's a technology provider that specializes or niches in the supply chain industry. In the logistics industry. So they provide IT services, Bloom Global, to trucking companies, shipping companies, and they are down because of a cyber incident. And based on my research, they provide a platform that allows these logistics companies to run their businesses. And that's essentially what's down. So I kind of, alluded to it a little bit in my comments about the other companies that were SaaS applications or cloud applications. Again, software that helps the supply chain move things through the supply chain. Another target that we're seeing with cyber criminals, who they love these kinds of targets because it is critically important, especially with today's world and where we are today with everything that's going on, that supply chains can keep moving, right? We have enough disruptions happening with supply chains, with other things that are going on. Now you layer on cyber attacks, taking down companies that provide software and support for these companies, and you really got a big mess on your hands. So Again, this is a deep, dark article. I mean, it's not on the dark web; it's on the surface web. But you're not hearing about this on CNN, CNBC, and this is a big deal right now with all the things that are going on around inflation and supply chain issues and stuff like that. So, what do you boys think about this?
It's kind of disturbing. I mean, because we've got, like you just said, the inflation issues, the supply chain issues, and this literally, down at the end of the article, it said it forced a shutdown of most of its online operations, including freight shipment bookings. So that's a coordination of, your freight and the shippers and getting things moved around, caused delays for several shippers picking up containers, while others were left wondering when their outbound containers would return. And, every one of those delays is going to ripple down and have, an effect down the road on some product that consumers need or use or want or whatever. It's going to have a ripple effect on that. So this is not good, and hopefully they'll get back online soon. The other thing it kind of brings out, we know this, but I hear all the time from business owners, well, my software's in the cloud, I don't really need, security or whatever. And, bottom line, this is a cloud provider for logistic companies, and cloud providers can get hit also. That has nothing to do with anything.
But a lot of people, what I see is the thing that I see about the cloud services that I'm constantly reminding people is, yeah, you moved it to the cloud and you may have gained some things, you may have gained some compliance, things that you weren't able to accomplish, in your office or doing it in your own data center. There's a lot of different things that can come up, but one of the things that I have to remind people constantly is you might not have to plan for the cyber attack in the same way as with that as you do if you owned it. But what you do need to prepare for is not having access to that application, right? Mm-hmm. So you have two choices. You can choose to that's our application and that's what we're going to roll with. And if it goes down, then we're going to go to pen and paper. We're going to go to some like ad hoc thing that we haven't practiced. Or you're going to look at that situation and go, okay, proper disaster recovery planning is going to say, how long can we go without that application before it starts to impact our business, right? And the answer might be an hour. The answer might be a half day. The answer might be a day, right? And then you start to plan around that scenario. Okay, what if we lost it for 2 hours? What are we going to do, right? And you should have a plan for that if that's a concern. If we lose it for a day, what are we going to do, right? If you start getting into 2 or 3 or 4 days with something, and that's where I find a lot of businesses that we work with, that's where it starts to become an issue for a business. Yeah, we could live without that for a day or two, but after 2 days, it really starts to become an issue for us. There's where you got to start going, okay, what are we going to do with that system? This system with Bloom Global is going to be down for more than a few days, right? So how are these companies going to actually move their shipments, move the stuff that they do to move things through the supply chain? How are they going to accomplish that, right? And that's what your business needs to start looking at. Like whatever you make, whatever service you deliver, whatever you depend on to come into the office and do what you do every day, you got to look at those things and go, if we didn't have this for a week, what would we do? Would we just sit on our hands and not make money and potentially open ourselves up to liability because we can't deliver on our contracts? Or do you put something in place as a backup? Do you find a backup cloud solution? Do you have a way to access that offline and a process to get that data from the cloud back into a computer that you can access locally? And it doesn't even have to be the cloud provider went down. You might lose internet for a week, right? And if you don't have internet, you can't get to these cloud services. So these are all the things that a disaster recovery and an incident response plan will cover for you as you go through these exercises and start to evaluate your critical assets, your critical software, the things you need to run your business, and you start to figure out alternatives for when those things aren't available. And it may seem like a lot, it may seem like it's unnecessary, but if you have that attitude, you're going to end up like the universities that we talked about earlier, and not like what we saw with Tenet, right? That came up in what appears to be a fairly controlled manner. And this stuff comes out in these articles, right? It's very evident to people who are in the know whether you did this, the right way, and maybe you've done some testing before the incident where, you've got some practice with this, right? And I think that's the difference that we're seeing between the different attacks that we highlighted today. So what are you thinking about this, Ryan? Andre, you need to talk too. You're too quiet there. I must think you put a cardboard cutout of yourself on this.
There you go, right? Yeah. But we always talk about is how do you want to manage your risks? And it's also where people just think that Microsoft will never go down. Chronos, my time clock system, will never go down, and nothing. So it's too much, like everything you just said. We're relying on these third-party companies, and because it's in the cloud, people think it won't break. People think that
or because it's Microsoft, or it's too big to fail, right?
Right. Yeah. And we see news articles all the time. I mean, Microsoft is even publishing how they're getting attacked like crazy, and it just takes that one time, and not even that one time. It just takes that one account that you have that doesn't have the two-form factor, that doesn't have the geographic location restrictions and all that, and they're in. Yep. You can't just pay the subscription and just expect it to work and for them to protect you.
We talked about that last week. Sometimes it only takes one mistake.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't even take a mistake sometimes. It just takes an unknown vulnerability, right? And you can't really chalk that up to a mistake. So, Randy?
I mean, you can, but you'd be wrong in doing so.
Right. So,
all right,
boys, we're rolling into 45 minutes here. I think we covered a lot. Again, I think the theme of the show is start to look at your disaster recovery plan, start to look at your ability to deal with these attacks and how your company is going to handle it on the flip side. And unfortunately, if you're sitting here today after listening to this show and you still think, this isn't going to happen to me, I don't need to do this, that sounds like a waste of time and money, I got to focus on sales and growing my company, I can't worry about this. Just remember that this could be the thing that sinks your business. It sinks all the effort that you're putting in every day, working hard to grow something meaningful, and then some thug comes along and just, wipes it all away. We're just here to tell you that this is all preventable. Yes, it's going to cost you some money. Yes, it's going to cost some time and investment on your part to get to where you need to be for today's world. But at the end of the day, it's more than 10 times cheaper to do it on the front side than it is to deal with it on the back side. So that's what I'll leave everybody with. Anybody else want to chime in here before we end the show?
I'm good.
All right. Sounds good. All right. We'll see everybody next week in the next episode. Take care, everyone.
See ya.
Bye-bye.